Hi, this is Natalie from Namaste Farms, and today I'm going to teach you how to make unspun yarn. And so unspun yarn is this. It looks like this, and this might look kind of messy to you, but that's kind of the idea, because what we're going to do is we're going to make a yarn that looks super bulky but is really, really light. And there's a couple of techniques that I do to make it like this. Because as you know, one of the downfalls of novelty-esque type artisan yarns is that they really are heavy, and that kind of bothers me. I just feel like it's like almost defeating the purpose of spinning, because I feel like we should have air in our yarn. And but when you're making super bulky yarn, it's really hard for a lot of people to put air in it. And I always talk about how one of my favorite spinners is Janice Roseman, because she is really good at making super bulky yarn, and then it's still not very heavy. But even for someone like her, who is an expert at making bulky yarn with tons and tons of air and like really low twist, you're still using a lot of fiber, right? It's still like going to be, you know, we're talking like 4 or 5 ounces for maybe something like 40 yards. So, I mean, that's a lot. That's like a quarter of a pound, right? So anyway, okay, so we're making unspun. And Kimberly McAlinden made a pattern for this. I can't remember how many yards was in it, which I probably should have checked that. But it was really small. I want to say it was like 30 or 40 yards. And she made this awesome scarf with a really big needle and super airy, and utilized the fact that this yarn is not tightly wound. And so that's going to be on our shop, our Simple Patterns on Etsy. And it'll accompany this video. So anyway, okay, here we go. First of all, people know that I like to spin from the lock, but this is one of the exceptions. And what we're going to do is we're going to spin from a bat. So I made this bat, and my favorite thing to use for really airy yarn is alpaca. So this is an alpaca and mohair bat, and I probably have a little bit of merino in here. And there's something about these colors together, this brown. Right now I'm really digging like coral and brown, and this like sort of turquoisey mint color. And then I love to throw in some chartreuse. So here we go. What we have to do is we're gonna spin it, and then we're gonna unspin it, and then we're gonna auto wrap it. And the way I auto wrap, because I'm like auto wrap disabled, it's kind of different than a lot of people do, because a lot of people are better at it than I am. But what I like about the way I do it is you get a lot of thread on there, and also that's what's going to help hold our yarn together. So I like to be really careful about not making a lot of striping, and that's really evident in this yarn. How you see there's blocks of color, but there's not a lot of striping, barber pulling. See? It's like big blocks of color. Chartreuse, blue, pink, white, brown, but I don't have too much barber pulling. It really bothers me, barber pulling, because I think it looks really amateur. Of course, there's some yarns that we want to be barber pulled, but for the most part, I'm not saying it's not going to happen, because you have multiple colors here. Okay, so I'm going to get my leader going here. What we're going to do, we're going to try to overspin it. Okay, that might be really easy for some of you, but I've spun so much trying to not overspin that it's very hard for me to go ahead and just let it like really over twist, because we're going to go spin it the other way. We're going to unspin it. Hence the name Unspun. Right? So I can feel like I want to let it go so bad. So you have to turn your tension up and just let it, like really, really let it get very, very tight in your hands with no air in it. Because if you can't do it, if you cannot overspin this yarn, because we're going to unspin it, you're going to have to spin it again the same way. And that's what I have to do. I'm not going to belabor the point and make you watch me spin again and again and again, because sometimes I've had to spin it 3 times. So what I'll do is I'll spin it to the, like let's say I'm going to spin it to the right, then I will take it and I will get another bobbin and I will spin it to the right again, because that's how hard it is for me to have to overspin something. And like I went to one of JC's things, because everybody knows I love JC, once, and there were some yarns where you had to overspin them, and it was like I simply could not do it. So for someone like me, you have to just end up spinning it more than once in the same direction, right, to get extra twist on there. But see how I'm purposefully, like I'm really paying attention here to make sure that I don't have any barber pulling. And see, I had that little thing. That's good. That means that we're getting somewhere. That means that I'm actually getting somewhere in my overspinning, because that is overspinning it. I just don't like it. And then I pay attention to what colors go in where. Okay, I've got white here, and now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get some brown in here. And maybe a little bit of this coral, because I like these two colors together. But there's some barber pulling, that's okay. Here's some coral. Here's some coral. Really loved it. I love this coral with this brown. I think it looks fantastic. And now I want to get some solid brown. And I end up just sort of pulling my bats apart. I mean, really honestly desecrating them is what I'm doing. And I'm just going to continue to try to overspin, which, as I've told you, is misery for me. And then there's going to be some things that I really want to, some places that I'm going to want to put this chartreuse in. And so I'm going to grab, now what? Okay, so this is a bat, but I like to get, if I can, with my bats that I make, I want to bring in some locks, just some straight locks that haven't had the, combed out of them, or, carded out of them. And then I'm going to do, I'll show you. And I really like this chartreuse color next to white. So I'm going to put in some white, and then I'm going to put a lock in. And you want to put air in it by picking it apart. That's putting some air in it, because everything needs to be airy. This yarn is, honestly, I'm so in love with this yarn. I went crazy, and I think I probably made like 900 yards of it once. And I don't, I'm not big on making yarn, so if I'm making 900 yards of something, it must be good. And it's sold like hot, oh my goodness, it's sold like hotcakes. So here, I know that I'm going to want chartreuse. I'm sort of doing it thick and thin. Did you just see that? I'm making it thick and thin. I'm doing the thing where, see how I'll make it small here, and then I let my hand barely form over it and make a bump right here, and then I'm going to pull it tight here so that it's thinner. That's the thick and thin. Here I'm going to hold it in my hand so I can form it. I'm not going to jump over it, because you need to have, that's one thing JC talks about, is I don't know what the word she uses, but you don't, because it's been a really long time, but you don't literally let go of it and go on to the next. Some people do that, because you do want to have your hand around this to form it a little bit and pack it down, right? Here we go. That's awesome. That's my husband's totally laughing. My dog has kennel cough because I keep adopting these other dogs, and that was her. That was awesome. You get to hear real life. My husband's totally laughing. Poor guy. He's holding the camera, trying not to move it. I just love, it's like afternoons with Namaste Farms. It's someone's barking, my kids are thumping, someone's fighting, the dog's throwing up. Oh, hi, sweetheart. Yeah, that was you. And Wonder's a rescue too, but I've been obsessed with this. Like I'm sure you saw on my Facebook page, you're like, could you just show us how to make yarn? No, I can't. Actually, this is my time. But I got a dachshund, and it was in the kill pen. It was actually in the pen. They didn't even advertise it like on Pet Finder because it's blind. And it was 7 years old, and there was this call to arms. And Southern California has the highest kill rate because we're basically bankrupt. California's bankrupt, and San Bernardino County is. And so they have 3 days, and then they put him down. Well, his 3 days were up, and he didn't get adopted. He was in the euthanizing portion, and the call to arms was made, and I was like, I'll take him, and I took him and Scrappy. This other one, of course, I took Gooby Doo, and so at this point, I guess I'm a pet hoarder, but everybody's given my dogs kennel cough, which makes me really sad. But I guess it's better than parvo, right? You can actually live through kennel cough. Okay, so getting back to the point. So anyway, I've become a crazy rescuer. And I didn't used to be like that. I used to be like a normal person, but now I can see where we're going at this point. I'm going to be like, in jail for being an activist on the street. I just know it. Okay, so as you can see, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, and I'm going to keep doing the thick and thin. I'm going to continue to try to overspin it, which I'm going to be really bad at. So what we're going to do is I'm going to make a portion of this. We're going to cut, because I'm going to have to take it back. I'm going to have to get a bob, and I'm going to have to respin it, and I'll just show you a little bit of that, and then I'll show you how we're going to auto wrap it in this kind of special way that I do. The special way, which you're going to go, wow, that's so special, because it looks really messy, but that's what I like about it. It looks messy. We want to get a lot of that copper color in there, because for me, I think some of the beauty of this yarn is this copper color with this coral. There's something about copper with coral and light blue that I really like. And one of the things that I am going to tell you is, if you notice on this yarn, there are colors that I really don't want to join up together. Like, I don't want to actually join this green up to this like red color, I think that would look really ugly. So when I start changing colors, if I put them together and they don't look good, like I love pink and brown, I will join those together. I'll have a brown section and then I'll put in some pink. I will not join them. I would never join these two colors together. I would separate them by white or by brown. And so these are just like some kind of color things that you just have to learn through trial and error. And once again, you know, you have to, some barber pulling, like see here's some barber pulling that looks okay, but it's not super busy. I mean, you can make this yarn, the reason that this yarn is beautiful is the colors are not muddy. And you have to be really careful about muddying your colors. And obviously that means switching colors, and when you switch colors here, you don't want to constantly go in. If I'm going to switch colors, I want to go in with my, okay, there's my portion, my thick part. I'm going to kind of try to go at a 45-degree angle so that I don't get the barber pulling. Okay, so see, I'm going to wrap it here so there's no barber pulling. And now I can make my kind of thick spot, and then I'm going to make my thin spot here. And I'll show you the difference. Okay, here I'm going to make a sort of a bobbly thing. Okay, so now if I'm going to join another color on, let's say this will be really obvious, I'll take this white piece and let's show you. Once again, I'm going to go at a 45-degree angle to join it so that there's no barber pulling here. And that's really important. So many people ruin their yarns by putting too many colors and then having barber pulling, and then they're, you know, doing add-ins, and it's just, it's ugly. And so you really, I mean, this is just design. I'm just talking about design here. And you really have to be careful with that. Now, so if I was going to make barber pulling, which, you know, I don't like, I would not go in at this angle. I would go in at this angle. And I'll show you. See how, wait, well, of course that was really bad. It's really hard for me to even barber pull at this point because I hate it so much. Although I can spin my hair in there really well. Whoops. Okay, so barber pulling would be, I'm coming at this angle, and see how it's going to stripe, as opposed to coming in at this angle. You want to come in like that, and then there won't be that barber pulling. Okay, so we're going to cut, and we'll be right back. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to spin mine again, because I can already tell that it's not overspun enough. And so what I would do is I would just take the bobbin off, and just like I was going to ply, but I'm not going to ply. I'm just going to spin it back onto this other bobbin. I don't know why I just did that. Okay, now my dog's going to get a fight. Awesome. Okay, let's not get in a fight, you guys. It's honestly comedy gold. Let's see. All these different personalities and dynamics. Okay, stop, please. Okay. So, this, I love this one, I'm telling you. Okay, so in my case, because I know if I didn't just show you this part, then people would be like, well, I don't know what you mean by spinning it the same way. Okay, I'm going to have to stop just for a second. You guys, please stop. Honestly, it's embarrassing. It really is. Imagine if you came over to my house for dinner, you'd be like, really? And then they all beg, too. They bark and beg. Okay, so I was going to the right, and I'm just going to go to the right again. I'm literally going to spin it. See? I'm just going to spin it, just like I did. And actually, I'm going to try and hold it a little bit, because some of these, my thick and thin places, I really, really, really want to be, you know, I don't want them to fall apart. So and I'm going to try to hold it in the thin places, not the thick place, because I don't want to smash this air that I've made from before. So I hold it in my thin place. I don't hold it in the thick place. Because if you hold it in the thick place, it's going to be like re-spinning it, and it'll end up smashing it down, and you don't want to do that, because remember, what's the point of making thick and thin if you're going to take the thick out? It's all going to be thin. Right? So, yeah, you definitely have to have, because now in a minute we're going to spin it the other way. And we're going to auto wrap. Okay, so I'm just going to do this thing through the whole bobbin, and we'll cut for a second, and then we're going to do auto wrapping. Okay, so I'm done spinning the entire bobbin to the right the same way as I spun it when I started it. I'm going to take this one off, and I think, or maybe not. Yeah, I am. I just, honestly, it is. It's comedy. It really, it's unbelievable. Okay, so now this is where it gets very interesting. And I am not the greatest auto wrapper. I'm going to be honest with you. The Spinolution wheel that has two, I think I've talked about this on one of my other videos where it has two of these orifices. They call this the Frankenstein orifice. I don't think that's what it's called online, but that's like a nickname for it, which is an awful long nickname, right? But the other one, the one that it usually comes with is a hook, and that can hang up on auto wrapping. So you want to get this one if you have a Spinolution. You want to get something. Some wheels don't auto wrap well because if they have a hook or something, they can really get hung up. So here, the whole thing with auto wrapping, it has to do with apparently angle. And for me, I don't even care about the angle anymore because I am just not that great at it. So I figured out the way to do it, the way that I can do it. So here we go. So now we're going to go to the left. We're going to go to the left, and I'm going to take okay, these are called cone threads or cone yarns. And so if you go to eBay, oh honey, we can't eat that. If you go to eBay, this is like, I want to say it's like, they call it Mylar. So you can put in cone yarn or cone thread and Mylar, that search engine together, and try and find them. But you're always looking for cone yarns. And they're usually inexpensive. I want to say this was like $9 or something. And I mean, there's, I don't know how many thousands of feet, but a lot. Please, please no. Please, thank you. No, we're not going to, okay. We're not now flossing our teeth. Okay. I swear none of this is scripted. Okay, really it's not scripted? You mean you wouldn't want your dog to eat your thread? No, please. That's Scrappy. I got him, believe it or not, at a rescue too. And he was on his last leg too, I'm telling you. We're going to put him down. Okay. No, wait, Scrappy. Okay, sorry. Okay, so the way that I am going to auto wrap is I'm going to throw it. I'm going to pull it and throw it. Because auto wrapping, usually I guess there is a way that you can just literally as the name implies, it'll just start wrapping as you're spinning. But for me, since it doesn't work, I'll show you what I do. Okay, first you got to anchor it on. So I'm just going to anchor it in a kind of a messy way because now this is the hard part about this though, is that because I throw so much out that it's constantly catching on these pegs, it's no big deal. It's just going to take a little extra longer to spin it, but because you're going to have to take it off the pegs. So I get a bunch in my hand like this, right? And so I actually kind of ply it, but I do it really loosely. Like I kind of guide it. I hold it over here, right? I don't let it go, because if this thread, which you can hardly see, so this is sort of a bad example, I guess, on this yarn because it's really hard for you to see this, but instead of you can't let this yarn get inside this orifice or it's not going to auto wrap. You have to keep it back here. You have to keep it back here. And so I hold it as if, this is like some sort of an anchor for it. So then it's just going to wrap loosely, and I help it wrap. I want to help it wrap so it wraps where I want it to wrap, right? And I make sure I don't put any tension on it, because if I put any tension on it, it's just going to ply it. And I'm going to hold it at a 45-degree angle. So I'm literally just letting it loop really loosely. And you want to turn your tension up because you don't want to unspin it so much that the yarn comes apart. And see, it already got the auto wrap, it already got caught, that loose thread got caught. Do you like that? It just came in. It's no big deal because you're going to patch it in. This happens I'm just going to let you know, with unspun, it's going to happen because you're unspinning it. And like technically, I probably should have even done it one more time, spun it to the right one more time, so that would have been 3 times. See, it takes a long time because I would have spun it 3 times to the right, but I didn't want to, I just didn't want to. So we're going to patch it in. No big deal. Okay, I'm going to overlap it here. I'm going to, take the tension off a little bit so I can patch it in. All right, there, patch it, patch it. Okay, now when I go back to auto wrapping, and you're going to have to kind of go pretty slow. I'm going to tell you, because you got to always make sure that your auto wrap is wrapping at this 45-degree angle and very, very loosely around. But you got to make sure that you actually it gets into the orifice and it's not getting caught on things, because it'll just exactly what happened. It'll come undone. It'll break. And this thread is going to keep getting caught on these pegs. Or whatever wheel you have, it's going to get caught. Because I have a magic wrap that I use, same thing, it gets caught and I'm always having to undo it. But the final yarn is worth all this work. It really is. It'll make the lightest, most amazing scarf. Now see how this auto wrap looks? See? I come in at the 45-degree angle and I'm holding it. It's an anchor for it. And I'm going to have to unwrap some just like this. And you have to be very ambidextrous, which, you know, I don't spin very much anymore, so I probably don't look very coordinated when I'm doing it. See, and I'm just going to hang it. I'm just going to let it keep wrapping. And I'm going to pay attention to how fast this is going into the orifice to make sure that I don't have any of this thread hung up on my pegs. And it's kind of a pain when it gets hung up. And sometimes it'll get hung up or wrap around this piece of PVC, and then I just break it. It's no big deal because this is decorative. This is not like applying thread, right? See, and now see, it's not going anywhere. And I know that means I'm hung up. The second your tension, it's not pulling, you know you're hung up somewhere, and so then you just have to loosen it, right? You find out what is caught where, and you pull. There we go. And then you can get, you know, you can check for any weak spots when you full your yarn to make sure you don't have any super thin spots that are going to break. But part of this auto wrapping, it's not only decorative, but it actually is giving it a foundation so that, you know, it helps keep it together because it's barely spun, right? I mean, that's the thing. It's not a super strong yarn, obviously, because we've unspun it. But that's what puts all the air in it. It makes it super light. And that's why you don't use a really big needle when you're going to knit, a really small needle, because you don't want to knit something that has a tight gauge, because that would be just defeating the purpose of having this amazingly lofty yarn. And I just keep holding it and just keep adding it in. Keep adding it in. Make sure it's not caught on anything. And see, my tension's up a little bit high. I kind of have to hold it back sometimes from pulling, because I don't want it to be too stationary and spin in the opposite direction too long, or it will completely unspin and it'll break like what I did earlier. But I think the best way is to actually do it maybe 3 times if you're not good at overspinning your yarn, which I am not. You know, you just end up, after so many years of doing it, you just have a natural feel for when to let go of it. And it's very hard. Your muscle gets that memory. And I'm going to check because I can see there's no uptake, so just check. And I don't want to pull too hard on it right here, you know, because I don't want it to break. Okay. I can feel that see, I love this wheel with this, that brake. I use it constantly. And I know I've said it about a million times that I thought, how stupid, why would anybody use a brake? And I use it all the time. And what you can do is, if you feel like your yarn is not, first of all, you have to use long fibers. You can't, you know, this is not something you could use really short fibers with, because we need the length to be able to help keep our yarn together, since there's not a lot of twist, right? If you have short fibers and not a lot of twist, there's no overlapping. And we need there to be some overlap. And that's how our yarn stays stable, right? So the way that we have stability with this yarn is that we use long fibers, and then we also use this auto wrapping. And when we full it, that's going to also give it stability. Okay, so we're gonna cut away, and I'm gonna finish doing this, and then I'm gonna put it on the niddy noddy, and we'll full it and go from there. Okay, so what I did is I started putting it on the niddy noddy, and I'm gonna tell you before I explain how you're gonna pull this off. Sometimes what happens when you're making it, this thread will get caught on whatever it is you have, I don't know, whatever your guide is, and so you'll think you're not getting any tension, and you'll think maybe, you know, it's somewhere in your yarn, when in fact this little tiny thread is hung up on something. So you have to just make sure that everything's free in here, and that happens to me with the auto wrapping with this really fine stuff, is it'll end up getting caught on these hooks, and I'll think that my actual yarn is caught, and that's why my tension's not pulling, and I'll be like, why isn't it working, why isn't it working? But in fact, this little thread is hanging up on one of these pegs. So it's really important to have these troubleshooting things, so when you get stuck on something, you're not freaking out and like, I can't do it, I can't do it. Another thing is that when you take this off the bobbin, you absolutely cannot pull on it, especially if you haven't put enough twist in it, because if you do, you're going to break it. So what do you do if you break it? Well, it's not that big of a deal, because you know, some of the stability is going to be when we full it at the end, but you have to be very, very careful, and you will see some weak spots, right? I mean, I probably didn't put enough twist in this, you know, just for time's sake. Okay, see right here. Okay, here's a break. We've been pretty good doing this so far. So I'm going to find the break and find the end. Okay, here it is, no problem. And see, I just pulled on it, and you cannot keep pulling on it. I just want to pull for some reason. And I'm going to overlap the pieces and like not really felt it, but kind of, sort of. And then when we full it, it's going to take care of itself, because it'll be basically felted on itself. But at this, you know, very delicate juncture, you have to be very careful. You do not want to pull. And so, and there's just such a temptation to do it. And then it'll get hung up on here on the little, the little pieces of the auto wrapping, you know, this thread, and you'll just want to jerk it. And if you do, you're going to break it, and then you're going to have to patch it. And this is not, you know, a super, super, super stable yarn. We're doing a lot of things to make it stable. I talked about that before. You're using a long fleece. You're using this thread, this auto wrapping thread, and then when we full it. And we're going to overspin it so that when we unspin it. But it's just the way it is. I mean, there are just some yarns that aren't super, super stable. But then when you knit and crochet, that adds stability too. So anyway, okay, so we're going to cut, and we're going to go back over to the sink, and I'm going to show you how I full it. Okay, so here I already have my water hot, because I don't want to make you sit there while I'm trying to make the water hot, and you want it to be ready to go. So this is how the yarn looks right now, and quite frankly, I think it's amazing. But once again, don't I say that about all my stuff? Actually, I don't. To be honest with you, I'm extremely critical. But see, what I love is we haven't done anything to it, and see how it hangs? It's just gorgeous. I love it. And yes, some of it came apart, but that's to be expected. I spun it the opposite way. I should have spun it 3 times to the right and then 1 way to the left when I did my auto wrapping. Another thing I could have done, and I've said this before, is that I could have actually, after I auto wrapped it to the left, I could have actually basically auto wrapped it to the right, which would be spinning it 4 times in the end to the right. But it doesn't matter. So if you do that though, you might be taking too much air out. So you have to be really careful. It's trial and error, because every fleece is different, and every combination of fleeces is different, and you're different. The way that you do things, like if you happen to be someone that likes to overspin your yarn, you're not going to have the same problem I have, where it wants to break apart. But if it breaks apart, we know how to patch it, right? So another thing is that we're going to come over here and we're going to get it wet. Now, I showed you this on another yarn. I hate to even get it wet because it's so beautiful. And I'm going to tell you how it's really light. So I'm going to go ahead and get it really hot water. Very hot water. And a lot of people aren't going to, even Kimberly was like, oh my gosh, would I have to go through all that if I wanted to make, and I'm like, yeah. I mean, you're going to have to go through this, what I'm going through now. So I'm going to take, and what I would do is I'd find the places that I know aren't super stable. And there were a few super thin spots. Okay, here's one of them, right here. See, it came apart. The reds came apart. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to felt them together with this soap, right? I'm going to overlap. I'm not pressing too hard. I'm not pressing too hard because I don't want to take all the air out, but I want to join it. I want to rejoin it. And I'm going to go around this entire thing and I'm going to look for any weak spots. Here's a weak spot. I'm going to find its mate over here. I'm going to do the exact same thing. And as you make this yarn more and more, you'll get better at not having broken places, right? Me, I haven't made this in a while, and I'm a little rusty. I'm going to be honest with you on my skills, and you'll probably be better than me because you'll take more time. You know, I'm trying to make a video and get this done and, you know, get it out to you. And so I'm not taking my time. Most people spin because they enjoy it. And I'm not there anymore from having made so much yarn in my lifetime. That it's, you know, now I want to share this craft with you and have you be able to be really good at it and be able to make a living. I mean, that's really my goal, is to be able to make it so that you guys can make stuff that's interesting and enjoy the craft like I used to. And, you know, be able to profit a little bit. Because that would be nice, huh? To be able to have a hobby where you can make a little bit of money. And it makes you feel good when you can give the gift of creativity. So anyway, after this, see, I only had a few places that I knew were bad, and so basically now I'm going to leave the rest alone. And if after it dries, I find more places that need to be patched, I'll take those single places and bring them over to the sink, and I will do this just with that area. The ones that are broken, I will felt together. And believe me, by the time you knit it or crochet it, you'll have a solid piece of yarn that and a solid garment that you can wear, and that will hopefully last you a lifetime. If you have any questions, you can email me at littly@mac.com. You can find me on Facebook at Namaste Farms. I want to thank you so much for watching this video. Happy spinning, happy knitting.